Hi, I'm Peggy Jean, Egyptologist and artist, and, well, I would say aspiring artist because I'm still learning and currently writing a children's book about ancient Egypt. And my plan is it to create this book in full colored pages with my own illustrations. At the moment, I'm still figuring out which technique is the best for such a big project, and I estimate the book will have around 170 pages. My goal is it to provide historical accurate images, well, at least depictions where we as Egyptologists have evidence for. Nevertheless, I'm pretty aware that every illustration contains also an interpretation, and so I'm still wavering about how creative I can be without losing the approach to be precise, Today I want to try out a technique with watercolor and colored fine liner pencils. I hope this works out because I've never tried this before and I have never painted columns. I have already sketched it out here and I'm curious to see the results. Columns are an essential part of ancient Egyptian temple architecture, and in Egypt there are various forms that can be distinguished by their upper part, the so-called capital. There are capitals that resemble the Egyptian lotus flower, and some resemble the papyrus plant. And those are exactly the two I want to try today. So let's get started. I have already sketched the forms here, and now I'd like to talk to you a little about the columns, as this is a very interesting aspect of the ancient Egyptian style in their sacred architecture. So imagine you're standing inside an Egyptian temple. At first, it feels super heavy, right? Like everything is just built to hold weight. And you probably think this is because they need to carry this heavy roof, right? Well, this is true, but there's more to it. The more you look at it, the less that explanation really works, because what's actually going on is kind of the opposite. The floor is basically the earth, and the ceiling is the sky, and the columns in between, they are not just support columns in the way that we think about them. They are more like plants, like this is like a garden. A temple is like a garden, and this garden is made of stone, and it's growing. You will see capitals with closed blossoms and with opened blossoms. So instead of thinking these columns hold the roof, it's more like the whole space is trying to recreate nature. And when you imagine that in ancient Egypt, the temples were fully colored, this is even more impressive, right? And once you realize a temple is basically a garden that resembles nature, and once you see it like that, a lot of details suddenly make way more sense. For example, there are water lilies, for example. They are one of the main inspirations for early column shapes. And the Egyptians were surprisingly precise about them. They didn't just carve a flower. They actually distinguished between different types. Some are more rounded, more softer, and as I said, they had a closed blossom, and others were really sharp in their shape, more pointed, with these really fine linear details. And in the earlier periods, they almost got obsessively accurate. Even the little stems in between, the ones that would hold a bundle of plants together in real life, you can find it in these temples. Later on, that changes. Those structural details stop being functional and turn into pure decoration. Things get denser, more ornamental and a bit more excessive, to be honest. So you can kind of track a shift there from observing nature really closely to stylizing it more and more. Now, the big player in all of this is the papyrus plant. That's basically everywhere in Egyptian column design. It has this big triangular stem in the beginning, and you can see that translated directly into the stone. And then there were so leaves at the base and so on. Then you can see these plants open to the top, or they stay closed. And it maps pretty closely to the real plant, at least at first. And over time then, the shapes got smoothed out a bit. The columns become more cylindrical, and that's not because they forgot, it's because they wanted more surface. So they wanted to create a surface area for carvings and inscriptions. And so again, you see this trade-off: less botanical accuracy, and then you get a more political messaging. They needed space to place their message, And then you get things like palm columns, and what's really nice there is that they are almost always shown as single forms, not bundles. And this is actually also how palm trees grow in nature. So even in a highly stylized system, there's still this really this sharp awareness of how different plants behave. And later on, especially in more, you can say, experimental phases, it gets even more detailed. You see spiraling forms, bindweed, like where the artist is trying to capture that exact moment a bud starts to open. And there are even examples with inlays, colored glass, and so on. And the complete column becomes like a jewel. This architecture in ancient Egypt isn't just about solving structural problems, it's about expressing their worldview. And that really comes together in one small but kind of amazing detail. The ceiling isn't a weight, it's the sky. And the columns don't carry it. They just, they grow towards it. But back to my little watercolor disaster here. As you can see, I made a classic beginner's mistake. The outlines I drew earlier weren't done with the right kind of pen. They're just fine liners, This is the ink isn't waterproof. So when I dip my wet brush into them, everything runs out. And at least I know how not to do it. Anyway, I want to continue a little bit to just do some color studies in order to make it right the next time. And let's enjoy a little bit the process now. So the next day is here and we have a beautiful sunny spring weather here in Germany, and I got myself a fresh cup of coffee. And I want to show you what I've learned so far yesterday, and rest assured, these are mistakes I will probably never make again. This is the result after everything dried, and I'm absolutely not happy with it. The shadows are too dark and the contrast in general is too high, and considering the soft warm light in Egypt that is really unique, this is not how the remains of that unique sacred architecture look like today. And besides, I realized that the size of my paintings is too small. I think it's better to work the sketches a bit bigger to catch all the details better. So let's give it another try. And I'm using here the same page of that expensive arch paper. And this time I will draw only 2 columns below each other and focus on the capital. So the quick sketch is done, and today I want to try out a new palette I've got. Even though I actually own the large color set with 168 shades, I'm increasingly realizing that I'm really a purist. Maybe I'm just stubborn, I don't know. But I like to mix my own colors. And so I'm currently trying to use a basic palette like this here to replicate the beautiful sandstone colors that make ancient Egyptian architecture so unique. This palette here is from Winsor & Newton, and it's actually a travel set that comes with a small cute brush, and I don't know yet if I will use it, but at least I'm unpacking now the paints. So here it is, that beautiful thingy. I'm really curious if I can catch the colors I prefer. So now I finished the watercolor period, the watercolor phase of my painting, and this time I decided to use waterproof pencils with waterproof ink, and I still don't know which color I want to use. Here I'm testing on the side. This one is dark brown and this one is sepia, and the sepia appears to be a little bit too reddish, so I try it with the dark brown, and here I'm outlining a little bit the shape of the columns. Here I'm using again my favorite watercolor pencils from Faber-Castell to soften a bit the shapes, to make the edges a bit more smooth. And as you might know, these watercolor pencils can be mixed and blend with each other, and you can use water to create a nice surface. Yeah, that's for now. And if you have any comments or questions regarding Egyptology or the book project, or even my paintings here, or even if you have some advice, I am open to your suggestions and I'm ready to learn from you as well. So please write it in the comments and give me a thumbs up. And if you want to follow me along my journey, please consider subscribing. Thank you. Thank you.